Howdy folks, it's Frank here and it's Friday afternoon and I hope you're having a good week. It's the 1st of May. It's what now? It's almost been like 5 weeks since we've had this lockdown in place, and how's everyone going? I'm sure it's a bit tough everywhere, isn't it? Today's topic I wanted to talk about is about Job's wife, a tragic, in my mind, a tragic woman who was totally misunderstood. I've heard many people speak about Job's wife in a way that she was sort of part of the problem. Her famous words, which everyone knows, is curse God and die. Imagine that. Imagine that's your legacy. Curse God and die. Do you remember Job's wife? Yeah, she's the one that said, curse God and die. So I wanted to bring this subject up as a way that we can have a fresh look at it. I know that many people who have said things, out of different situations, and we seem to always remember the little negative things of what people say, as opposed to who they are as a character. Sometimes even that doesn't matter. It's always this little one-liner that we remember. And so with that in mind, I'd like to revisit this story about Job's wife. When she said curse God and die, what was the surroundings of that time? Well, we know her husband Job, he just suffered terrible losses. Livestock, the home, the 10 children, they all died as a consequences of Satan challenging God, saying that Job, in keeping his integrity, wouldn't keep it if he was pushed to the nth degree. And so he was also struck then with chronic disease, and he suffered terribly. And in the midst of this, his wife, seeing her husband, man that she loves, said to him, curse God and die, or however she would have said it. And so this is a story we know about her. That's all. There's not much we know about Job's wife. So let's go back and let's have a revisit of this and see if we can maybe take a different approach maybe and help us to see this. When we think about the 10 children that were killed, the livestock that was destroyed, their livelihood that was taken away, it was not only Job's, right? Can we make that point? It's not only Job's, this was also his wife's life. So his wife also lost 10 children. She also lost her home. She also lost status in the community. You can imagine her position. She's the one that she saw her husband, and probably this is where one of the first cases of social distancing took place, because when he was suffering through burning ulceration that covered his entire body, there would have been intense itching, maggots in ulcers, inflamed eruptions, erosion of the bones and blackening of the falling off the skin, which he grabbed a pot clay and scraping that off, and that would have brought out a tremendous smell as well. And this poor lady, his wife, you imagine the stress that she was under. You got to remember, with these kids that were her kids, she carried them for 9 months, all 10 of them. She would have watched them grow and become who they were. She would have been very deeply in love with them, and all of a sudden, all these things happen. She's lost them all in one swoop. Can you imagine if that was all your kids just gone in one moment? You whatever you own, business. Imagine your business just totally wiped out. You're basically bankrupt. This was her position, and her husband, no doubt. And he's the one that suffered, but she was suffering too. And so the account says, in Job chapter 2 verse 9, It says, then the wife said unto him, dost thou still retain thy integrity? Curse God and die. And so with this background in mind, thinking about her situation, she says these words. Now, his loss was her loss. So with that in mind, we have to ask the question, would she, seeing her husband suffering in so much pain, with all the anguish that she was going through, do you think, and would it be too far-fetched to think that she would have preferred just that, you know, instead of seeing him going through so much suffering, that maybe it might be better for him to just die? I'm not saying what she said was correct, but can you see the mentality in that? We see today a lot of people who see their partners or their spouses suffering with terminally ill, who are terminally ill. A lot of them seek some sort of what's the word, for their husbands or wives to have some sort of peace where they stop suffering, don't they? It's an interesting scripture in Ecclesiastes 7:7. Here's what the Bible says in that verse. Ecclesiastes 7 and verse 7, it says, surely oppression maketh a wise man mad. Surely oppression maketh a wise man mad. So when we think about that thought, oppression drives wise men into madness. So it's possible to see that under all this duress and stress and emotional and mental turmoil, she says this. Interestingly, Job's reply was to her, but he said unto her in verse 10, thou speakest as one of the foolish women speaketh. What shall we receive good at the hand of God? And shall we not receive evil? In all of this did not Job sin with his lips? So his reply or rebuke to her was counted as he never sinned with his lips. But it's interesting, I just thought there was the phrase where he says to her, what, shall we receive good at the hand of God, and shall we not receive evil? Now we know that that's not quite accurate either. But isn't it during times of stress, people, for some reason, don't ask the question, why? He didn't ask the question, what's going on with me? What's going on here? Maybe he thought about it, I don't know. It doesn't say so. But that's an interesting thought for us as well. I think today we might be going through things and we probably don't know exactly why we're going through that. And maybe that might be a chance to put it to God and ask him what is happening and do some research on it. So when I think about Job's wife and think about everything that she had just gone through with her husband, with the children being wiped out, the material assets all gone, and her husband, do you think, when you think about that, do we think that maybe her goal wasn't entirely to try and get her husband to reject God? Maybe she definitely was misguided, but in a way that she probably wanted her husband's misery to go away. But it's interesting, before you decide, well, no, she was clearly used by Satan and etc. She was clearly evil, or, can you imagine that? Imagine if I was suffering and someone was having a go at me, and my wife is having a go at me, or my husband's having a go at me, and because of what? What have I done? Etc. Instead of we sort of going down that path, here's a couple of questions to answer. Why doesn't God? Why was she not corrected by God as Job was in Job chapter 38? Why was she not rebuked with the so-called comforters of Job by God? You know, her husband did that. But why doesn't God then come back and say something? Why did she not have to offer a sacrifice or anything for her husband to pray for her? Could it be that God knew that his wife and mother, who had suffered the same shame and tragedies as her husband, had made a simple error in judgment, one that did not reflect any disloyalty as its purpose, but a normal desire to end her husband's suffering? Well, that's up to you to think about. Yes, no doubt, we can sympathise with Job, we all do, but we also should just take our time and maybe sympathise with the wife, you know what I mean? And we find ourselves in sort of similar situations today, especially as we wake up. We might find ourselves in all of a sudden, once a united home, now we're in a divided home. You know, once we were on board as in our goals and in our belief system, and now our beliefs and goals are different in the sense that we aren't worshipping the God in the way that one, the organisation does or the religion does, and one as we see through the scriptures. What can help us get through these sort of challenging times? I think one of the things we need to do, this is just personal view here, is respect our spouse, respect our friends, whether they're talking to us. If we're disfellowshipped, obviously, a lot of them won't be talking to us, but we still need to, we still can show respect and love to our friends and our family members. And I think that's really important. We see that with Job and his wife, eventually God blessed them with 10 more children and double their assets, and no doubt they lived happily ever after, in a sense, you know, as long as they grew old together. And Job no doubt wouldn't have held her comments against her. And so we likewise today just sort of need to think about the steps we're taking and the decisions we're making in these trialsome times. Sometimes we have to see the bigger picture, just like Job was, and Satan here, and the whole situation. You know, Satan really didn't go after Job's wife. You know, he didn't attack her. He just went for Job. But with that in mind, that then caused a ripple effect for all those around him, his close friends, obviously his spouse, and so that is that's how the enemy works. He doesn't need to attack everybody. They will do their part because everyone is a little bit misguided and not understanding the situation. So words will come out that can be quite hurtful. And so we need to sort of step back a bit and maybe just hold off saying things that might hurt and cause further issues, which is only playing into the hands of the evil one, the devil. I've fallen short many times in this area. I've said things and I've wished I could take them back, and has put me on a course that has caused rifts with my friends and people I care about. But at the same time, obviously now looking back, I can see the errors I've made. And so I can't help to think of this situation, that we don't want to have a legacy like we think of Job's wife, as a lot of people do today, see her as the person that said, curse God and die. As tragic as that is, but that's the reality. And so my appeal to you is, if you're going through a hard time and you're struggling, put it to God. There is a lot more happening that we don't see. And maybe we can be like Job in that he was faithful, he was patient. We know that's what he's referred to as a faithful man and a patient man, and his endurance. And this is a time of endurance for us. So my suggestion is we can also be thoughtful. We don't like to be obviously going through a hard time, but that's part of walking with the Lord. It's not going to be an easy course. We know that. We probably know that more once we've been targeted, as it were, or have been kicked out even of a religion that we were part of for such a long time, and then we start to feel the effects of that trickle through, doesn't it? And in different ways, whereas once upon a time it was like this, it's no longer like that. Now we might not think too much about it. We obviously make friends, new friends, and we forge a new life, but the residue effect is still there. And so maybe we can be like Job's wife. She was a woman that was misunderstood totally, in my opinion. We can sympathize with her if we can personally learn not to maybe criticize those around us, to look to the good and not impute wrong motives to anyone. Maybe God will be kind to us and people will not judge us without knowing all the facts. And I think sometimes that's what is lacking, is facts. A lot of people don't know. They're just going off what we're saying and what they hear, the gossip that they hear. There's so much more to learn from this account. I mean, I could go on and on about it, but maybe that's something that we can think about as we go over through the weekend, and we have people, and we ourselves have hurt others with our own words. Maybe we can look at this sort of account and see how God, who is very merciful, deals with us in a merciful way, and it allows us to work through these issues, whatever they are in our lives, in a way that is dignified, and maybe we can pass that on, that response to others in a dignified manner. So anyway, that was my thought for today, was looking at this case of Job's wife, a tragic case, I believe, but I think totally sometimes when I've seen online and from other preachers, they do rip into it quite harshly. But I think I think maybe God, if he wasn't prepared to rebuke her and put her in a place, as it were, I don't think we should either. Okay, guys, enjoy your weekend, and we'll talk soon. See you later.